Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Instacar HK. Today we're filming part 2 of our Ferrari 360 Spider episode. Now for those of you who watched the episode last week where I reviewed my own 2004 360 Spider manual, as promised, today I've met up with No Fish Shark with this beautiful one owner 2002 360 Spider F1, and I'm going to test it out today to see the difference between my manual car with the ECU upgrade and his original F1 transmission. Get into the car. Let's get some facts first. The 360 Modena is obviously part of the Ferrari V8 lineup. It came right after the very popular 355, and therefore it had big shoes to fill back then. And fill those shoes it did, because the 360 was actually a very important milestone for the Ferrari V8 lineup. Its design principles were very new back then, and it redefined the whole V8 lineup, and principles of which are still used in today's F8 Tributo. First off, the design. The design of the car is now a lot more aerodynamic focused. It was mostly done in the wind tunnel, and you can see from the outside the lines are a lot more smooth and streamlined than the older, more wedge-like models like the 355 or the 348, etc. And most importantly is the underbody. The 360 is the first model where it has sophisticated underbody, under-tray aerodynamics. You see in the rear of the car, although it's not as updated as today's technology, but it really, for the time, has really sophisticated rear diffusers, which help the downforce of the car. On the design-wise, it's also very modern back in the day. Ferrari had gave up on the pop-up headlights and for the first time introduced on the V8 model these clear lens headlights, which was very new at the time. In the rear, for the first time, Ferrari introduced a solid glass to display the engine bay. Now this is due to technology. At the time, glass technology was finally able to withstand the heat and whatnot of an engine bay. So unlike the F40, for example, which was older, but first of all, it wasn't glass, and secondly, it needed air ducts in the clear cover. But this, for the first time, is a clear glass engine cover. Now, the engine. It uses the same DNA engine as the original 308, but obviously a lot more powerful and enhanced. It's a V8, 5 valves per cylinder, pumping out 400 horsepower. Which may not be a lot in today's standard, but you have to understand the 360 came out in 1999. At that time, even the Gallardo wasn't out yet, so it had no competition, and 400 horsepower was quite a lot. The transmission, actually for the first time, was placed in the longitudinal direction to improve airflow and again, aerodynamics. Another important development of the 360 is its use of aluminum materials. For the first time in the Ferrari V8 lineup, they produced a car where all the body panels were made by aluminum, and also the monocoque chassis construction is also fully aluminum, making the car a lot lighter. Therefore, even though the 360 is a lot bigger than the older 355 model, it is actually only 40 kg heavier, which is quite remarkable. Right, so now it's time to go for a drive in No Fish Shark's one single owner 2002 Ferrari 360 Spider F1. Immediately you can tell that it's a very cherished car in very good condition. It's like new basically. So first thing, this is an F1 and you have to drive an F1, you know, in a particular way. It's not like the easy dual clutch systems these days where you can just drive it like an auto. I'll go into details later, but now at the moment we are in neutral. And to select in first gear, you put your foot on the brakes, and then you flip the right paddle. Right is up, and then left is down. So now we're in first gear, and we're ready to go. Now, so when I said it's a bit different, essentially the F1 is a manual gearbox, but with an automated clutch. What that means is you have to be very particular and very careful with your right foot regarding the gas and drive it, use the gas pedal as if you are driving a proper manual. Because it's a single clutch, there's no dual clutch wizardry going on with, streamline shifting and whatnot. So just now when I took off, for example, I have to be very committed and press on the gas pedal progressively, but in a committed way, so that once it reaches certain rev, the clutch will be fully engaged, and therefore you wouldn't be riding on the clutch, causing the clutch to burn and whatnot. So it's all about how you control your right foot. You don't drive it like an automatic car where you just don't care. You don't have to be specific about it. You don't have to pay attention. For F1 manual transmissions, you have to be very conscious of what you're doing with your right foot in order not to ride on the clutch and to burn it. Ferrari made a total of 16,000 plus 360s with the hardtop and the Spider between 1999 and 2004. They didn't give concrete figures, but online research suggests that out of those 16,000 plus 360s, about 4,000 something manuals. So the manuals are a lot more rare than the F1. And today, given everyone prefers a manual over F1, it is undeniable that the manual gearbox is more desirable and also worth more value-wise. There's a group of people that will pay a premium over the ordinary F1 gearbox for a manual, just like what I did. So from today's review, there wouldn't be a chance that after the review at the end of it, I'll tell you, oh, I prefer the F1 over the manual. Absolutely, that wouldn't happen. But what I can offer is tell you how it feels like to drive the F1 gearbox. All right, now we're hoping to get some clear roads, and let me really open up this F1 360 and see how it goes. I'm in first gear now. That was fun. Although this car has an original exhaust, and I said previously in the last episode that original exhausts are quite tame, and they are when you drive slow. But when you're on an open road like that, when it opens up, it is quite loud. I mean, listen to this. Second gear. It is quite the screamer, the 360. And with the original exhaust, it's like it has a valve. Once it passes certain RPM, then it really opens up. It's a different kind of sound and different kind of music than my 2B, but nevertheless, it is very enjoyable. Now, first impression, you can really tell this is a single owner car because the car feels very, very solid. I mean, mine, as mentioned in last week's episode, I've already changed all the bearings and ball joints, but this, being a one-owner car, cherished by No Fish Shark all along, really feels quite solid in a very different way. So that's very impressive. Speed-wise, frankly, I think I don't feel it is substantively or significantly slower than my own manual with the ECU upgrade. Very solid, and with the F1 transmission, yes, it is not as engaging as the manual, it is not as mechanical, but it is true that it keeps your attention more focused on the road than on finding your gears, finding the gear stick, etc., which is what Ferrari intended back then when they had this F1 transmission, including the ones today. The point is to try to take all the distractions out and make and allow the driver to be as focused on the road as possible. And I say, even though the 360 manual is more engaging and feels more mechanical, actually the F1 transmission of this day, the single clutch F1 transmission, is also quite mechanical. It also does feel rather mechanical because it is, as I said, it is a manual transmission but for the automated clutch. So it definitely feels better than the seamless digital feel of today's dual clutch gearbox, including early ones like my M5. So it is still engaging, but just not with your left arm and your left leg. Again, which one do I prefer? Well, of course I prefer my own, but one really shouldn't discount the 360 too much if just because it is a F1. If you like the 360's looks, if you can afford the F1 version, I say you should go for it because it is still fun. Just check this out. Well, one thing for sure is the automated clutch does the heel and toe much better than I do with my left leg. Wow, bus, bus, bus. And because this is a single clutch gearbox, every time you change gears, you have to let go the throttle. Unlike the dual clutches of today. Say I let go the throttle and then I put it back on after it changes gears. So all these, it does still give you an engaging feeling, at least more so than the dual clutch gearboxes of today. In summary, we have a very good day today, clear roads, good weather. The 360 F1, as I said in the beginning of this video, I would not prefer it over my manual because I'm one of the people who paid a premium for the manual because it is a manual. But I have to say the 360 is in itself a very respectable car. The technology, even though the F1 single clutch F1 transmission is outdated now, it is nevertheless a very capable and respectable technology. It's very easy to drive when you're at speed, even if you're in traffic. If you do what I did, what I told you, be careful with how you fetter your right foot and not drive it like an automatic. This car is actually fine to drive in traffic. Yes, there is the maintenance issue. The maintenance issue being because the clutch is automated, it automatically rides on the clutch more than a manual when you are using your left foot, assuming you know how to drive a manual. Therefore, clutch wears on F1 gearboxes are a lot quicker than a manual gearbox. So usually they can start going as early as 20-something thousand kilometers, and therefore this does add to the maintenance cost because manual clutches can do twice that mileage before you need to change the clutch. So that is one letdown, and something that the dual clutch system wouldn't have, because the dual clutch systems have two clutches. There's no need to ride on the clutch as much, etc. But if you can get over that and drive it carefully, respectfully, it's a great car. The 360, I don't care what any people say, the 360 has a very beautiful design and one of the most timeless design for modern day Ferraris as far as I'm concerned, and it will be a future classic, that I am sure of, because simply just for its looks, and it's such a great balanced car to drive. So if you like the looks of the 360, if you find a good one, if the manuals are a bit of your budget, do not rule the F1 out. I think that would be my advice, because as you can see from just now, it's plenty of fun. It's still plenty of fun. So I want to thank No Fish Shark for lending yet another one of his cars for us to review. If you like this video, please give it a like, please subscribe. Please also watch the part 1 of the 360 Spider review video from last week. If you haven't already, I'll put it in the link down there. Please subscribe. Please remember to click the bell button next to the subscribe button so you know when our next video will come, which will be soon. Thank you.